introduction at the beginning. All right, from the city of Fairfax City, we are very grateful that Marc DeSisto accepted our invitation. Marc, welcome to my humble podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
No problem. Marc, let's
Nice to
go
meet
back
you.
to same here, man. Let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? I mean, were you taking
Um,
piano lesson, guitar lesson when you were a little kid?
you know, the radio was always on in my house,
Yeah.
and uh, I was born at the right age where the Beatles were coming on the radio. But before that, it was a lot of my mom had a lot of Motown records on in the house, so it was so much of Motown, and then in like Beach Boys stuff, some Chuck Berry, they all like that. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra records, Herb Alpert records, and
Well,
these are all these early records that I heard before anything, and then you hit that age where you kind of click to. The Beatles show you something, and then there's all these other bands that are like the Beatles, like Hermits, or all these other English bands, the Animals, and you start listening to those things, and those are the roots, and then all along comes Led Zeppelin 1 and the Stones, and you know you're off, to this whole new thing, and then Black Sabbath comes after that, and Pink Floyd is there, and Robin Trower's there, and not to mention Hendrix, so and the Allman Brothers. So that's my DNA of the bands that all came across from after 5 years old to probably even 4 years old. Started hearing all that stuff. Beyond, into my high school years and stuff.
all right.
Yeah.
So in high school, were you in any band at all, or
You know what? I played bass just for a minute, and I happened to work at this place, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I
sure?
was working there, and I got along really good with the manager, and come to find out, I was like 16, and he was a couple years older, maybe 3, 4 years older, um, and he was in a band, and I was fascinated, like, man, fucking guitar and PA. So I go over his house and hang, and I introduce him to another friend of mine who I'm going to high school with, who I guess they knew each other, and so they got together, and next thing you know, my friend Dan got a PA, and they put a band together, and I went out when they did and started mixing live sound. So I'd mix the guys. I was probably, yeah, definitely 18 years old, because the drinking age was 18 at the time.
Yeah.
By then 17, 18. So you could get in, and have the band play. They playing Tom Petty tunes, some Zeppelin tunes, Neil Young tunes, uh, Crosby, Stills and Nash, those kind of tunes.
I got it. I got it. I got it. And then, so at the time, any pressure for your family in terms of, hey, forget about music, you're not going to make any money,
Oh
go
well,
to go to
it was like,
university, become a doctor.
my grandfather's brother, his name was Joe Zizza. He worked at the New York Philharmonic, and he was a librarian.
Yeah.
So there's some musical root in there somewhere. So that's
Yeah.
from Joe, I guess, and my grandfather's side. Uh, my mom was totally into it. My dad was like, when I really wanted to start taking it seriously, he was like, a little apprehensive. He didn't understand it. He didn't know there was what there is. There was actually a business on how you make records. He
Yeah.
really didn't understand that. And but then there's a lot of stuff that you go through when you're at that age, when you should be going to higher college, that you're at a studio working, learning that craft. You're putting your time into that, and because that's what you want to do. Where do I want to be? I went to a junior college in Boston, Graham Junior College in Kenmore Square, and I think I entered it. I graduated high school '78, so Graham right around the corner, September. So there was a 2-year program you can get an associate's degree in audio engineering, where Berkeley just was like musician. You had to be a musician, and I wasn't good enough to do all that. And there was also a longer time. And so I went through Graham, and then after the first semester, the school went bankrupt. So my heart, my career was dashed, and I took a couple of night courses, at electronics place, for if I was like, oh, maybe I like electronics, maybe I'll get into that kind of thing, I like radios, I could make that stuff be cool. Um, and what happened? So Graham, I took a course with the teacher and like 6 other kids at a studio to do a recording for like 2, 3 days from like midnight to 3 in the afternoon. That was it. Those were the time, grave shift. And like 8 kids started and maybe 3 of us were there at the end. And I finally got a job in a studio at Fleetwood, which was in my grandmother's hometown because I was living there,
Yeah.
in Revere, Mass. And I was going to Boston, just commuting. It was a great commute. It's where my grandparents live. I grew up in Danvers, Mass, a little west of that. Uh, and that was a suburbia, and that's where we grew up. But I always kept going back to Revere, my grandma's house, like weekly forever. And it was great because it was a different music scene with some of the kids that you met from there. They were more into Bowie, and it's like I discovered Bowie and all this other stuff, Roxy music from like in Revere and stuff, and I'm like, wow, what's this stuff? So when you're a kid, you can't get it all, so you got to learn how to get pieces of all of it. Uh, and that was a cool thing growing up. So I got a job at the studio called Fleetwood Recording. It was right down the street from my house, and I'll never forget it. It was like, the receptionist is like, oh, they never hire anybody, dude, don't, you're wasting your time. Don't be too mad if they don't call you back and shit. I'm like, wow, this is a drag. But my grandfather knew the chief engineer. They go way back, so I met him, and I started working at the studio, running. And then I started, my friend told me, one of the other engineers, Jeff Landrock, he said, look, if you want to learn anything here and be useful here, go upstairs, get tapes, make copies, teach yourself how to edit. Because they did a lot of recording for children's records and baseball, World Series records, and radio commercials. So there's a lot of recording, tape editing with the script, turn it in. At the time, we only had an 8-track Scully and a couple 4 tracks and 2-track Scullys. We had a 67, couple maybe 467s, LA2As, some decent old gear. When I first got to the studio, it was so complicated. It was a rotary assignment, it had 24 by 24 rotary assignment where you wanted to put each track. You dialed in the track. I was like, made sense now, but at the time it was just overwhelming. And eventually the studio got an API console from Media Sound in New York City, which was like a year after I got there. So that was pretty cool, learning how to do that, and learning about that console and how that sounded. But, at that studio, before I did anything, I had to paint the building, paint the big side, and I had to do a run. The guy said, I'll start paying you if you go to New Jersey and get my new car and be back here tomorrow by like 3 o'clock. I'm like, okay, this is wild. So I get on a bus at like 2 in the morning. My grandfather drives me to the bus station, South Boston, get a Greyhound bus to New Jersey, get a cab to the dock, get the keys. And he says, here, the screw, you got to take the screwdriver with it too, because I can't figure out how to start the car without the screwdriver. And it won't start. So I'm like, you hold it here and the alternator, and good luck. This is how, I don't know how else to do it, tell you. So that's what I did on the way back. I had a few stalls with stick shift, and I did the thing, and I got back to the studio at 2:30, half hour ahead of time. give the guy the keys, and I said, "Oh, by the way, here's the screwdriver the guy gave me to. I've been hot starting your car with from New Jersey." And he's like, "No, did you have the seatbelt in?" I'm like, "Seatbelt?" He said, "Yeah, you have to have the seatbelt, or the car won't start." And at the time, nobody wore seatbelts. 1980,
Sure.
no one wore seatbelts. So that was that story. And I started getting paid, and I learned how to edit, and I was on sessions. Um, Before I knew it, I was recording, like things that were on like American Airlines and stuff. And I would do certain books of you'd meet some brilliant people who memorize. I remember I recorded this guy. I recorded the book of Hamlet with this one cat, and he memorized everything. The whole book. He had memorized the entire book. How many pages? 240 pages or something. I recorded the to be or not to be speech at least 600 times.
Wow.
Six at least. Yeah, it was just, but he had to have a full performance, and number 25 was probably good enough, but number 600 was like, yeah, who knows? But that's how it all. That's then over a course of a period of time, sessions. But that's how you get better by using the same guy again, coming in, and using the same mic, and like because you're dealing with noise problems with early microphones and air conditioning.
Yeah.
1176. That's very sensitive. So you really learn how to dial the mic pre and the threshold well, and get a good level and make it sound good, So yeah, that's one of my favorite things I learned there, and and then amongst a million other things of how to edit, and we duplicated cassettes, so I had to make cassette masters. I made 8 tracks. We did 8 tracks. We did pressing. We had 3 small studios. Well, one big and 2 smaller studios. It was a great place to take off. I was there like 4 years, and then a producer came in, and he was like, "Mark, we did us a couple rock sessions, and it went great." And he said, "There's this other studio you may want to go to. It's more hipper musically, He's like, I think I've grown this place, so why don't you go there?" And I'm like, you know what, let me give it a try. And I went out there, and I started working with him and his bands, and with rock bands, locals. And it was tape machine, it was 16 track tape. And that studio was really booked a lot, so I had my hands full. And became the chief guy there. First guy moved on, and so, I even got to record Joe Perry. We did this project, and it was like a band called The Lines, and they recorded Dirty Water, which is a Boston anthem. And he came in, and that was like big highlight. Like fucking Joe Perry is pretty big, He was a big idol of mine. So that was really a highlight. And then eventually another artist came in. Um, and I worked with him, and I finished his record out in California. He said, "I'm going to finish this in California. You want to come?" So I was jumped on the opportunity to come, and so I left. This is now 19 and the end of '84. I came to California. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
started at that studio, like '79. I got I know what I'm doing now, sessions, headphones, the mics. I get it all down after that, 24 track recording. Feel like I can go do this, So I came out here, and he fires me right away. Fires me.
Really?
And yeah, he fired me. He says, I need because he was already established. He had quit a band that was big and to do his own thing now at that time. So I'm like, I kind of didn't. I understood it. I didn't like it, but I was like fucking cool with it because I'm in LA now. Fuck, I'm here, And it didn't take long to be here. That it's like, well, I'm not going back. This is no way I'm leaving this place. It was like sunny and just like you know, the city was just like, man, it had a vibe. And you knew you would drive around and you would see this studio and that studio, and you just couldn't count them, And then there's the ones that you know. So I get a job. I go look for jobs as an
Yeah.
assistant engineer. I said, okay, I can get a job assistant engineer. I know how to do that anywhere. So I'm in the room with the guy talking, and I hear that artist's music coming out of one of the rooms. So I leave and go see him, and I was, said hi and that whole thing. I surprised the shit out of him, you know what I mean? That was very funny. And then I went back. I didn't get a job at that studio. I got a job at this studio called Soundcastle. And
Gotcha.
but before I got to Soundcastle, someone referred me to a job, and the job was to record Joan Collins, who was a big time movie star. That was my first job in LA. So I go get the equipment, and the guy doesn't even trust me, but I had to convince him to let me take the gear, because I just got in town like, it's 7 days in, and it's like you get a car. My car is not here yet. I'm having my car shipped. I had to rent a car from Ugly Duckling Rent a Car, and now I'm following the guy. I get the gear. It's a reel to reel, couple mics. And so now how to do it. I know how to take it to another studio and do the editing. I'm just did what I did like a year ago. So I got this gig, and we go to her house, and it's in Bel Air, and it's magnificent, and it's just like, it was just like the art on the walls was like, okay, that's real, and she was pleasant, and there was some perfume, but I did it. She was a pro. I was a little nervous putting the mic up her blouse, but she's like, honey, don't worry. I've done it 1,000 times. It's okay. So zing. And she was a movie star, man. Totally a movie star. She was fabulous. And I think I had some ice cream after. She's like, got me some ice cream and shit. That was nice with water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to have that. So that was nice. It's just checking the whole place out, like sitting down for like 6 minutes, like wow. And then that was it. I went to a studio, but I made enough money to stay in LA. That's the
Gotcha.
whole key,
Yeah.
And I found a place to stay, and then I found a roommate and got a gig. We found an apartment in Hollywood. It was really nice, and it was like a year lease, and I got a job at a studio called Soundcastle. I was an assistant engineer. I mean, I had
Yeah.
my car shipped out, and I started commuting, and eventually, I was just, learning the trade, learning all the people who come in, all the different engineers, what their style is, what they need. You sit and you punch in, and it was, I communicated that language well, so I got the job. I knew the board when the guy tested me for the job interview. I knew the board really well. He was like, oh, and you know better than a lot of people. So I got the job. Neve used to have on Sunset a showcase store. So I went there and got tips. And then I went and got the interview, and I was like, yeah, bang, here it is. So that enabled me to go there. And next thing you know, my first session was like Jermaine Jackson or something. I was assisting for Jermaine Jackson. It was like, wow, this is incredible. Doing vocals, and it was good. It was good. It was a lot of work, and people work hard. You know what I mean? That was the first day. Like, oh yeah, this is for real, real. This is like the guy's going at it. You know what I mean? This is great. So I was hooked, and I worked on some Pat Benatar there, and some song that was in a Rocky movie, and it was like before you know it, the sessions and some cool, R&B stuff that was coming through there, and I was just loving it. All the different engineers, the styles, uh, and then my friend, the producer Joe Ciccarelli, who helped me a lot during my whole Hollywood time and everything, referrals, and he got me that job for Joan Collins. It was a referral, and amongst many to come that he has helped me get, because it was great to have some allies that can help you find work, when you know nobody,
Sure.
So he was like, okay, I was probably at Soundcastle a year and a half, and he told me about A&M opening, renovating 5 studios. So I went over there and met Shelly Yakis, who was from Massachusetts, and he knew Bill Ferruzzi. He knew my boss because his dad owned Shelly's dad owned a studio, and Bill Ferruzzi, who was the chief engineer at Fleetwood, was at Shelly's dad's studio first.
Wow.
And at Fleetwood, Joe Ciccarelli used to work at Fleetwood before me. So that was like I used to write Joe a few letters like, "Hey, I'm thinking of coming out there. Well, how you doing? What do I need to do?" And he'd write me back. It was before email or whatever, and
Sure.
it was totally. He was telling me to learn drum machines and stuff like that, and sequencer stuff, and I was like, like, yeah, you don't see a lot of that in Boston, and it really wasn't like prominent there. And then, one of the biggest things I learned when I came to Hollywood was a SMPTE. I was like, oh, SMPTE, lock up 2 tape machines, you know. We never had 48 tracks. So all of a sudden you're on a session that has 48 tracks. You're locking up tape machines. You're learning that. You're learning how to print, learning how to sync up machines. Great, great process. And that whole thing, analog, was just solid. It wasn't broken at all. It was just like that would continue. It would be working still fine this day if that was still the medium. That's what you used. It might be well digital to more digital machines by now, but that whole art of real and console interaction was never broken. Um, but times change and you have to go the way the digital goes. So when I make this transition to at A&M, I meet Shelly and had to do. He asked me about SSL boards, and I wasn't really hip on them. I was familiar with them because I knew Bob Clearmountain used one, and I used to have a picture of him in my home. Bob Clearmountain when he did in early '84, "Let's Dance," Bowie's record. So I was like, oh, that's what's that board? Oh my, the fuck, it was like a, Ferrari on the wall or something. It was
That's
crazy.
right.
It was like, you just had to see yourself doing that, you know, and, that was the goal, and, to follow these guys who make records because you're after making a record. You're learning how to make records. You know what I mean? What's a record? What does it take to make a record? You know what I mean? What's the process? Everyone does it different. No one does it the same. There's something different about everybody who does it. Um, and that's the other art of it because I've done records so many different styles, well, drum machine first, then drums, vice versa, replacing this, that, it's a fantastic, way to make an art in music, the recording. So when I went to A&M, they were installing Studio A had a Neve from Montserrat. It was, the one the Police made their records on, Synchronicity.
Yep.
And after the hurricane or something, or it ended up in the States. There were only 3 made. Atlantic had one. These were special uh, consoles that Neves, George Martin had made, or Neve made for George Martin. There was one in Atlantic in New York, and there was one other one. I don't know where it was, but this one was pretty amazing. It ends up at the studio. It's huge. It's like a battleship. It's just like a tank. It's like, okay, it's just the knobs were huge. It was just like power, and it had remote mic preamps. So the mic pre's were like next to the the amp or the drums. It was one cable into the preamp, and then there was a long cable going to the console. So it was like a FET voltage. I understand when you're turning it that, you turn it from the console and it goes up. But the clarity and transients and the punch and the sonic, never heard it on any other board ever because it was, Neves were just beautiful. This Neve was really fully, discreet and headroom. It was just like big tone, happy tone house. You know what I mean? really good. But the thing is, you didn't a lot of times you didn't need EQ because it was right so transparent. It was like that's you. What are you didn't do? Maybe touch it or something. But it was like you're not using EQ that you would normally sometimes need EQ to do. If you know what I mean, like that's EQ'd. This sound was right there. And then if you put some 1176 on something, or a little compressor or Fairchild and Pultex, you were off in audio heaven right there. So they had the Studio A going, and Studio B had an SSL in it. So I learned all the SSL tricks and automation. I got the job with Shelly, and Studio B was alive, and that was their sessions were going on in Studio B. So I was just thrown into that. My first session was with Joe Chigarelli on Shelter, Lone Justice record. Jimmy Iovine was producing, and I met him that day. Sort of weird, it was like he didn't know I was going to be there, and he comes in the room. And he goes, "Man, who are you? What are you fucking doing here? I mean, I don't. Who told you could record on my record without asking me? Like, the fuck?" I said, "Well, Joe was just had to go out and told me to stay here and do what he's doing." So I was really caught in the middle, and he goes, "All right, sounds good, but don't fuck up. Don't fuck up." I'm in there with the guitar player just doing overdubs, punching in solos,
Yeah.
and it was just so natural that I was like, and then I said, "Who's that?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, it was Jimmy." I'm like, "Oh," because I've heard about Jimmy, but didn't actually meet him. So that was. Pretty cool because he did a bunch of records and I started working on his records and got to know him and I got the trust from him and that's when you're doing good when these guys give you stuff to do and it's like okay then they're not gonna tell you you're doing good but it's like fuck you're still there the next day you're doing good, you know what I
You're
mean?
doing all right.
Because there's a lot of guys who are just at your heels who's gonna want it, like I've wanted other people's gigs, you know what I mean? Uh, so, and then Studio C had an API, had a Herb's API, beautiful little board that they did a lot of records on, all the Carpenter's records on, and Studio, a lot of the early A&M label stuff. Um, Small room, but great, really just perfect sounding. And then there's Studio D, which was Herb's room. Herb's had a console, and it was a Trident. And by the time I got there, it was pretty tired. It was been there for a long, long time, but a great board. And that got replaced, and the whole room got renovated. And to this day, that Studio D, the way they did it with all the booths and stuff, it's fantastic because all records can't be made home. This is a place when the band has a trailer, and they pull it up and the gear comes out, and it's like, yeah, here we go. These guys have gear, There's all one amp isn't coming in, you know what I mean? Lots of amps, lots of guitars, lots of drums, drum libraries of snare drums and crazy shit. And it's a really good size, so it offers, live rooms and dead rooms. Really good. I recorded you two in that room. They're all live in the room, and
Wow.
their equipment was isolated, but they were live. We even had monitors so they could hear it like it was live PA.
Yeah.
So but there's some leakage, but you just deal with it. There's some baffling for the drums. It's with rock and roll. It doesn't have to be so precious. You know what I mean? The essence of that fucking noise is the key. And the hard work, and not be afraid to rip your song apart and start over with it, and I mean, maybe you were better, but you don't know sometimes until you've destroyed it that you had it. Um, that's to be said like with mix too, you know what I mean? You can kill a mix. And mix can be great live, and then later on, 400, 300 passes later, it's like small and gone, So, all right, so where was I? So that's Studio D, and then eventually they put in a mix room, which was right across from hall from D in the back, and long SSL, 72 input SSL, had to be slid into the studio control room because it was you couldn't get it through the door. So there was a window they had removed, and like 10 guys sliding this big SSL in. and it was ABC bus. It was a 6000 SSL. Really nice console. Great for mixing. Just great room. Just tight. You're in your own world there. It's tight. It's not a very live room. It's kind of a, it's pretty. Everything's in front of you. I think Metallica's Black record was mixed in there. Uh, I remember a friend of mine was mixing Rolling Stones thing in there, and I was working across the hall. And after the night, he goes, invited us in to listen to the mix, and it was probably that. So it was I forget the name of the record right now. It might have been. I don't know, but it was so good. The size of the snare drum, I couldn't believe that it was as big as the speaker. I mean, it was just coming out. I didn't know how a guy could do that. Such a great engineer, Don Smith. God rest his soul. Don Smith was the engineer. He also worked with Tom Petty a lot. So I got to assist Don, on things. And he was a really nice cat, man. Really sweet. Yeah, he
Wow.
ended up being like Keith Richards' guy. He recorded so much Keith Richards records, you know.
Wow. Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Shouldn't take it so hard and shit like that. Don, man, yeah, Don got the fat sounds. You know, those guys, old school engineers, man. They worked on sounds because you had to combine sounds. You know, you had to combine two mics to one channel, three mics to one, the kick drum, three to one. You know, so you'd have your whatever. You had room on the machine. You know, you only had 24 tracks or 16, so you kind of had to get that dialed. You know, and that studio A&M was just the place to be. I hit it at the right stride. They had everybody was in working in that studio you can think of. I'm sure Sting has been in there. Springsteen to U2 to Pink Floyd, Allison Mae, Suzanne Vega, Cutting Crew. I mean, Belinda Carlisle, Don Henley, that whole thing. Ivan Neville. Lost so many just amazing artists going through there because the studios. Also, these were clients of Jeremy and Shelly's that would come in to do records there, and the studio was built to stand the test of time. Like it was really built. Like all the mic cables were. The tape machines had mic cables on them. They didn't have little thin wires. These machines had like thick, uh, great shielding tape machines. That's why the sound was so good because they took steps in the right departments to make it just like the audio. Just forget it. It was amazing. It was really it was an art, between the microphones and the preamps and the way you can EQ, or the way you can repair something, a pop with a full pull tech, or how you can hit Fairchild, you know what I mean, and just you learn how to get these incredible sounds, and it's just daily business there, you know what I mean. It's just part of the day, It's just, yeah,
Amazing.
that's why you're there, to push the gear. And no people weren't in a rush. No one was like, "Oh, I got to get this done." They sat back. Everyone knew to when to. People know when to move on. Like that's how those are great. Here we go, the next, and let's see this combination. So that's the fun part of recording is when you're with the band all together, and you do your thing, and then you can make changes. uh, I always set up extra stuff when I record. I always have extra microphones, maybe 3 4 microphones on the side, spares, ready to go, with an effect on it, with the EQ, a plug-in, whatever, ready to go. So if something goes down, you have replacement. I was always the guy that as an assistant, I used to say the assistants control the tempo of the session, because if you don't know where everything is, and your patches aren't quick, or you're making mistakes patching in, everything just goes. It's like clog. You know what I mean? It's just a clog. You lose that momentum, that flow when you're just really kind of cooking, listening, patching. That's like riding a friggin' horse. That whole cool momentum. When you just listening to sounds. The guy's playing drums. You're in there. He's patching. That's your moment. That little moment. Those are your alone time. Get it how you want moments, because someone's going to come in and tell you to do this or look for that, and that's okay. But as long as you had your moment, you might have went past it. You might have had his sound a minute ago, so you know how to get that sound back. You know what I mean? Um, and so much of sound and getting sounds is always at the source. I mean, that was the other thing. Yeah, like all of a sudden you're in the studio. A tech comes in with these drums, sets them up in the big room, and it's like, and there's nothing ever better standing next to a drum set that's so in tune and deep, and doesn't, the overtones aren't going all over the place, and when he hits the kick, it's the kick, and it's just like, it's incredible. There's nothing like that, and the drum techs are just amazing. So as an assistant, you learn what they're doing, why they're taping it. And that's part of the thing is to, when you become an engineer, learn how to tune drums. You got to get a handle on that. So then the way there, if you're in the control room and you know what it sounds like because you tuned it, and it's not coming through, and then it's that process of figuring that out. Why that's not working. You know. Um, But that's when you get a guitar sound, you and the guitar and the guy bang, playing. That's it. No one's going to interrupt you when you're doing that. They can see you're focused on that. No one's interrupting you. Um, and after a while, it's like you figured out what's your guitar mic, so it's not taking you so long anymore. It's like that mic on that amp, this preamp at that level, go. And if it doesn't sound that way, go right away and come out like you think your memory bank is going to tell you that it's going to sound like. Then it's like, okay, then it's the equipment. You know what I mean? And that's a shitty, that mic, it could be blown or whatever. Then it's back out to the thing. But you always have to make the amp sound good. Don't be afraid to work with the guitar player and work on the sound together. I remember when I did that Joe Perry thing, I was like, I had to tell him, I was like, man, the guitar, the fucking knobs were, I don't know, he didn't even care where it was. I said, the thing's a little dull. He says, well, that's your problem. So I'm like, well, okay, so yeah, I went right over, fucking right next to him, and fucking brought it up. Fucking then I turned next to others, because all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, fuck it. It was right. It is my problem. You know what I mean? I'm going to fix my problem. You know what I mean? And that's how you learn how to, not be afraid of your opinion. When you hear something, change it, and the guy's like, okay, you do it. Okay, I know how to do it. I'll do it. And you have to take that initiative, because you don't want to live with a shitty sound. I mean, here is Joe Perry. He's gonna like it later and give you, wave to you maybe, hi, bye. That was good. Yeah. Thanks for coming. But that one song was on the radio quite a bit, actually, in Boston. So it was a thrill hearing something he recorded and mixed and all that. That was the first thrill of like, wow, fucking there is like some. It can leave the control room and go somewhere.
Big difference between being like an assistant versus being the engineer. And as an assistant, you work long hours, right? You are 12-hour days or so, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, easily.
Easily
It's
12 hours,
you're there. It's like a 14-hour day, really, because you're there an hour, before the client gets there setting up.
right? You need to set up,
You're setting up, or you at the end of the night you're taking down, or you're documenting stuff that you didn't document. So those are all things that you do during the day to help your out time. You know what I mean? If you're caught up, then you can leave when it's off the tape machine. And then you shut it down. But when you're young, you kind of you're pretty hyped up. So I remember going home and watching TV. I mean, when you're young, you don't sleep as much. You don't need to sleep as much, and you're drinking a lot of coffee. There's enough going on for your attention to keep you awake. You know what I mean?
Good. Mm.
It is enough. There's no like, you're not sleeping on the job here. you, you know, so
Yeah.
that's a interesting thing. But the hours are long,
Yeah.
and that's why you have to. It's a commitment to do this.
Yeah,
You
because
know.
and a studio hire you, they try you out, they like you, and they start teaching you this, that, and that. And of course, the more you learn, the more valuable you are. But you need to pay the dues, so to speak, right? So you need to put the time. That's nowhere right now. Is it like this anymore? I mean, if you were to go to, I don't know, studios in
Yeah,
Los Angeles.
if I was working at Capitol Records, it's the
Yeah,
same thing. You book a 12-hour time.
I got it. Yeah,
Say I book at noon. I got noon to midnight.
yeah,
I usually will get there even almost, 15, 20 minutes, a half hour before the one, before I'll even put in an extra half hour still. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I still put in long hours. A lot of times you work with some people who like to work at night. And um, my favorite hours are 2 to 2. Those are great because there's a long morning, and 2 is good at night. If the phone stops ringing at 10, no one calls anyone after like 9, so it's nice and quiet, and you can just keep going. I like it.
Got it, got it, got it, got
Yeah,
it.
but
Well,
now it's like, you never start. I never started working before 11, ever, never.
uh,
If
well,
I was on a session before 11, it'd be like, what is it, jingle or something else, or union
uh,
thing or something.
no,
But generally, yeah, no, you need
what?
that morning. You need the space away long enough so you come in fresh and ready to go.
I got it. What memory you have working with, let's say, Stevie Nicks, for example, if you can remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that quite a bit. I remember what was cool. She wanted a unique echo. She goes, I need a little, some kind of cool little, mysterious little witchy echo. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we had 3-head tape cassette machines. So I set it up where I used the cassette machine as a slapback.
Mhm.
And it had a vari-speed on it, the cassette machine as well. So on the vocal underneath, I had this like little effect I printed. You print it back on the tape. So they have it all the time. But it was cool. She liked it. It was nice and dark, you know what I mean? But they again, that's it's recording artists that have been successful and that they know how to do their thing. You just sit back and you observe. Once your mic is set and you love your sound, it's go time. It's them. You know what I mean? And you try to anticipate what it's going to be like, but you can't never tell exactly the level someone has or whatever. But and typically for vocals, I like U47s. I like U67s. Um, and mostly the two tubes. Those are my two first guys to go to. Um, and then maybe some of the TLM stuff, 170 maybe. That's a nice little mic too that I like for vocals. And if it's a heavy rock thing, a Heil PR40, I like that. You could always go with SM7. That's a great mic. And I discovered this cloud filter, which you can put on the mic, and it gives a dynamic mic a boost, and turns a dynamic mic into, you can use 48 volts with the cloud lifter, and it turns it into a more exciting sounding mic. I couldn't believe it. So that's a good little thing that's been invented lately. But yeah, the microphones are M49s is great. 149, it's cool. I like that. I have that one. I have an old C414, an early one that sounds amazing. Um,
Good for you. Blondie. I just want to mention, like, you have worked with so many great people, man.
well, that was more. They weren't around. It was
Yeah.
more. That was mix.
I
That
got
was
it.
a
Yeah.
mixing the live record, and you do a few songs and send it to them, and they give you the thumbs up, so you just keep going, and then send a couple more, and then make sure you still are up, and then if you know you're done, and but yeah, that was good. That was a good one. That was
Yeah.
good. I really had fun mixing that. I love those songs, so it's keeping the excitement, making it sound live. There's a difference making a studio record and a live record. The live record is going to have, make it sound live. Um, so those are cool things about doing live.
Alison Moyet. What band were you?
Alison Moyet,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, she was an amazing singer. That was
Yeah.
really doing when I first got to A&M. They were starting that record, so I came in doing some vocals. It was already tracked, so I got to do some vocals, and that's with engineer Mike Shipley, who
Hmm.
was called in to do some engineering. So I was assisting him. I'll never forget. It was a Neve and an LA2A. No, that was LA2A on her, and that was plugged right into the machine. Didn't
Hmm.
even come back to the board. Right out of the preamp into the thing, and uh, maybe back to the board to bust it out. But yeah, LA2A could have been
And
no
after,
LA2A on to see LA2A. We would
yeah.
put post fader so that you ride the fader. The more you
Oh, I
ride
see.
it, the more you're hitting the compressor.
Gotcha. I'm learning as I go. I'm not that technical as you, but
Yeah,
I know
well,
enough enough
yeah,
to be dangerous. What happened in session? And we don't need to bring any artist name, but when things done well, and the engineer there, the assistant there, people are screaming at one another, and the musician, I don't like the way that the drum was set up, and my voice is not high enough. I want more reverb, and so forth. What it gotta be tension, right? Many times there is tension, and you
there
are
is, there is,
behind
there is, there
from
is, there
just the
absolutely
desk,
is,
and
and
people screaming at you.
I've heard many loud voices in my time. And it's important to people, so they care, so they yell. It's not. Some people, worse continue the argument and makes the yelling worse, as opposed to just like, fucking, I got it. I'll fix it immediately, and that's the end of that. You move on. Uh, and but the most, you don't want to continue the argument. You want to get it down as quickly and find out the solution and then move on. But yeah, it's people, sometimes the band members are talking and it's not your argument, so they'll come to the conclusion.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you have it, and just, what it is. But yeah, I think just handle it, you know.
What do you are artists in general receptive to input that you have? Like you say, well, if we were to do this instead of that, or in track number three, the drum should start here instead of there. Are they
Yeah.
receptive, or in general
Well,
they're
it
not?
depends on your role, right? If you're the
Okay, yeah,
like if you're the producer, then it's all game on. Everyone,
correct.
they talk about that. As an engineer, you know, you're probably not going to jump in that conversation right away unless you've been to your second album with the people or you've done
Got it right.
something else. But really, you just think about making a great recording. Let them handle that other stuff, and eventually you'll get to produce, and you'll be able to make those calls.
Correct,
Sometimes when you mix, you can, when I'm mixing, there's no producer. I'm making calls
correct.
on the mix where I want to maybe use a guitar or you change the position of it, turning it into something else. But during the recording, yeah, and an assistant engineer, you just don't say anything. You just that's not your deal at all. That's an argument waiting to happen right there. Assistant speaks up. Oh man, just no. Yeah, there's a protocol. You got to respect it. And, if someone asks you, and you got something to say, sure, go for it. Lay it out there. Um, and But generally, you know, as you get on with the people, you know, You can suggest, sometimes suggestions from engineers are a certain different type of track, or recording it differently, or double take, or you could say, what about a harmony? Hey, how about, do we check the harmony? Do we need another harmony there? You can always ask, as like you're asking and you're suggesting, at the same time. You got to be diplomatic about however you do it.
You being an engineer, a mixer, a producer, do you prefer one role versus the other, or I mean,
Well,
there's
I
more
know when I
money in being
first
a producer,
started
or
to
you
be
prefer that?
producer and engineer, it
Yeah,
was really like, wow, this is really hard, because I'm either getting sounds and my brain is geared to get sounds,
right.
or my brain is thinking of arrangement and then sounds are secondary. You fix it
Gotcha.
later. You know what I mean? You're supposed to get the right take, to get the right vibe. I mean, it sounds good, but you may have gone further before. You might have been like, okay, that's good for now. Let's move on. You want to get this track today, and it needs a lot of work, and I don't want to spend that extra, whatever, on the this and that. So, but as you go, um, you kind of know what to get quicker. You know what I mean? As an engineer, you know, or like I'll do a little less, and get into the thing, because today with the digital, as long as you like what your input is, you're going to be fine. The tools are great.
Right, gotcha. Now with the level of technology nowadays, that people, they don't go to the studio that much. They do everything at home. What's your take? Because now you're working a lot from, you have your own studio, you do a lot of work
Yeah,
from, right? I mean,
right.
is 80% of done can be done at home, and then they hire or they go to studio for the mixing, for the mastering, or
Right. That's what happens. I mean, a lot
yeah,
of guys record home,
yeah,
and and then I just do the mastering, or they get record home, and they really can't. It's hard to mix. It's hard to beat my mix sometimes. You know what I mean? If they work on it for, whatever, however long. But this is what we do, so I do it more than they do it over the years, and
right,
so you just have an offer. You can show them their music with your sonics that you create, and all of a sudden
right,
it turns them into like, we just grew a bit. You know what I mean? This is now more. This is real. This is a product. This is actual. We can sell this. This is really represents our band better than we could have done it. And that's
okay,
what you want to do. Our first impression is everything when you play something for somebody. You know. Um, but yeah, I understand that it's a money thing, and so some days I'll track and they go home and finish it there, and you just got to accommodate all this new music business. I like coming to a studio. I had a studio in my house for a long time, and nothing sounds like this, with a board and a place, and it's just really great also to leave your home and go to another space. And I think it's immense. And it's funny because when I come here, there's not a lot to do except sit. There's a lounge, and room, control room, kitchenette, bathroom, which is my chamber too. I put drums out there, but it's really to come here. That's what's great, is the focus, and you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. Whereas home, I might be distracting. The dogs want something, or
people
I
calling
get
you.
yeah, I get a snack, whatever. It's nothing. Is like, this is your. It changes your mood a little bit. You kind of like, yeah, this feels good to be in this environment. I've always felt great about being in the studio. So, and this one is, they did a great job, floating floors and tech power and all the acoustics treatment. It's really great. Chris did an amazing job.
In terms of the setup, do you have a ideal setup, or it will depend on the type of music and
No,
the way you do, or in
I
general you
have,
have your preferred?
when I go to a studio, I
Yeah,
have a template
a template. Yeah,
of
got it. Yeah,
all the mics that I'm going to use.
right.
Uh, you know, and the and the bussing and what compressor going to be on an insert or a post fader. For the drums have their own setup, bass has a setup, guitars have a setup, his vocal has a setup, and that's what you do. You send it, and the assistants, and they get runners, and the runners say, bring all the mics and put stuff on cables, and then when the studio loads in, they'll everything's set up. Then we put the mics around. Before that, it's already coming through the console. It's all tested. I've already given them a Pro Tools template, so it's already going through the board, and that's the time, to do it, because that's your alone time when there's no one bothering you,
Right.
and you need that time just to really suss out all the technical stuff, because you don't want to deal with anything later. You want to know any problems ahead of time. So when the time comes time to roll, you're just rolling. You know what I mean? The engine people, the musicians don't. Just flow, boom. You make it easy, and you just got to pay attention. You got to know where everything is, and that's when you thought about it. When I wrote it out, and this is my game plan, and I use a lot of same mics, so I know what they sound like in my brain. Like when I
Sure.
bring up the mic, I'm like, okay, it's supposed to sound a little dull there, or this is supposed to have, oh yeah, that should have the bottom. Well, if I don't hear the bottom, okay, well, why don't I hear the bottom? You got to have a great memory for what mics sound like.
Got it. Bands in general they will prefer a particular studio, and then they will pick you. I want to work with Mark, but go to Studio X, Studio Y.
Right. Yeah, that's the way it works is
Right.
a lot of times you could get a call that there's someone wants to use you to do a vocal at Westlake Recording, so
Westlake, yeah.
you get the details, you show up, you send it again, you send all my information before I get there
Got
to the
it. Got it.
assistant engineer. So this is
Right.
what I want, and then because if there's any hassle that they don't have a piece or something's not doesn't work that way or whatever, you can get a handle on it
Got it.
before
To
before
show
you
up
don't want
there.
to do any
Right.
of the stuff while you're there. You want to get all the sooner you get going, the sooner you find out where all the bugs are. Because
Mm.
it happens. It's just gear is old. Um, Someone might use that piece of gear and it's not working
Mm.
so good. So that way there when you come in, you're on to the next thing. You're not worrying about that. You're on to the music. You know what I mean? It's really to get the music sounding good when you show up on someone else's record. You got to get that going. You can't be worried about, oh, my vocal change this suck. It's just, does this work? You know what I mean? You know what? That's the whole thing.
Of
Guys
course.
out there, you want it to go bingo. You want it to be like, you know,
Yeah.
Sunday ice cream, smooth. Here it is. And that's
Sure.
how the artists will start trusting you because
Sure.
you're holding your end of the bargain up. You know what I mean? You're like, you're on that.
I got it. Any particular studio that you prefer, like Lace West or the Village Recorder? I just mentioned
You
a
know,
couple.
it was so lucky in
There's
this
so many.
town. If Los Angeles just has the studios of the best of the world,
Yeah.
and it's like you find the studio city was like it's so designed for entertainment. There's like, rental shops for outboard gear. There's rental shops for you want a certain year, a 52 Telecaster, you can have one like within the next 3 hours. You know what I mean? If you want a 59 Les Paul, you can rent that. I mean, you can rent anything in this city. Um, uh, People have rented the wackiest things.
Really?
Oh God, there's some client was missing his dog, so they rented him a dog that looked like his dog.
You
So
gotta be
he
kidding.
he could walk
Real?
it around the studio, and so that's kind of glimpse of Hollywood. But I love working at Capitol. I've been
Yeah.
really lucky to work there numerous times. It's an
Mm.
amazing facility. The studios are down underground. So when you
Oh,
walk in floor side, it's all the way down. And that's there are like three studios down below. You got A, B, and there's Studio C. And the chambers are in there that Les Paul designed. So those chambers are still there, and they sound really great. That's what was on all those early records, chambers, and
Yeah. Wow.
uh, so Capitol is one. East West is another great studio. They have several.
Yeah.
Beach Boys made a lot of their records there. Studio 3, Studio
Yeah.
2, Studio 1. Great acoustics. Frank Sinatra built one of those places, I believe. United, and I like to go to Henson, which is something else now. It was A&M where I started working, because those rooms are still like they were, and it's fantastic getting their work there.
I
And I
got it.
come to my place now because I can record here, so it's like you make it more affordable by having your own place, so you don't have to charge so much for the studio time separately,
And your
and then
time.
yourself, me on top of it. So it's a better deal
Right.
for the artist, who want to track. And I've tried to be like a one-stop joint. I record
Right.
you, produce, mix, and I master. You don't have to run
I
around.
see. I see.
And here's the full package, and it's like, and I like it that way because this is my, it's your production, it's your sound, it's all your stuff. So it's like, here it is.
Yeah. People go to work with you, right? And you have already your room, your template,
Yeah,
your
at my studio
settings,
here. Yeah, Mix LA.
and
Yeah,
you
Studio
mix
D.
and master and vocals,
Yep.
and they can call you at 2 o'clock in the morning. I suppose that hey, want to make a change. Or hopefully not 2 o'clock in the morning, but but they,
People. Yeah,
instead of going
when
from one studio and they hire somebody to do the master, another
yeah,
person to do the mastering, the
right,
mixing
right.
and
You're going
changes, right?
back, right.
Back and forth, yeah. So,
And I'll give you everything, and you can have it. You press it for vinyl, streaming,
or whatever, yeah. Yeah.
CD, whatever you need.
Yeah.
So, and again, I've done this because I've working so many years with different mastering engineers,
Yeah.
and I've learned a lot from them.
Yeah.
And when it's your stuff, it's not all over the place. You're consistent with your top, middle, and bottom, and keeping this whole thing consistent is the name of the game.
Any what memory you have working with? By the way, you should write a book, man. You have so many stories, man. Have you thought
Yeah.
about it?
I know, right? It's out there, isn't it? It's a lot of it's been an amazing full time. It's just and then I'll tell people, in between when I wasn't getting any recording gigs, because that happens. I had friends that were and made friends that were in movie stuff, or doing TV, or some live sound. And I've worked on TV pilots, doing monitors for people. I've done main mixing. I remember different TV shows. We would go and set it up, and it was a lot of work. It was cool, but it's still audio. It's
That's
a
right. Yeah.
microphone. It's a microphone. It's a speaker. It's going somewhere. There's an EQ that it needs.
Right.
So you have all those. All those, that there's so many skills you have by learning audio, that in this town there's tons of audio possibilities.
Gotcha. What memory you have working with Pink Floyd?
Pink Floyd, large setup, very large setup,
Yeah.
large setup, amazing. They brought on their own power, actually. They brought generators with 240 power because some of their equipment was at that voltage.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was amazing, working that out, and it wasn't a problem at all. You know what I mean? Uh, and that was, that's, again, there's some records that need to be in a big studio. That band needs to be in a big studio because they have a lot of equipment. I mean, there was so much equipment, and we did overdubs, we tracked, she did solos. It was like recording, and we would make sure all the analog tape, because we're recording on analog,
Yeah.
was every reel would hold up on 10K. We did a little test to make sure that the quality for every reel we used was great. And every occasionally you find a reel that the top end would be down. It's like, all of a sudden it's like, what shit, what happened? And it sounded great on the tape. It's like, the tape could be a little bad batch, but that was part of they had great protocols to high quality level of everything. You know what I mean? And the sounds coming in were just great because it was better than them, Dave Gilmour, and it was pretty just amazing rig. Sound out of all the speakers was just incredible, incredible. I remember asking him to play like Run or something, and he gave me the nod as I was setting stuff up. I was the assistant engineer on that,
Yeah.
and started playing it, and he hit it, and then he hit a delay, the repeater going, and then he played something on top of it, and then eventually he had some Leslie guitar on top of all of it. It was just pretty mind-blowing, But yeah, there
That
it
was
was,
before social media, so you couldn't take any picture, videos.
Yeah,
That
no,
was
just the
that
great
was before.
memories of
Yeah,
being in the room, you know
being
what I
in the room
mean?
with the people.
Being
Yeah,
right there and the guys in front of him. And,
yeah.
it's like, you want to kind of get to know because you're a complete fucking stranger. It's
To
that
them,
trust
right?
thing.
Yeah,
No one
yeah.
trusts you. They're like, who's this young kid in the recession? Is he an engineer? Is he a fan? Or what's the story? And like, you're all of that,
Yeah.
and, but you're there to do the job and focus, it's a focus thing. It's a
Yeah.
focus. It's a respect thing too. They respect. I always thought when someone came to work with you, there's that great mutual respect of like we're here for the art. You know what I mean? And uh, you know, not for tickets. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
Uh, but so that was that. But yeah, a lot of great hours, a lot of editing, different takes, a lot of tracking live. The room sounded good. We put the drums in the room through a PA to make them really big sounding.
And
That
at
was
the
good.
end, Mark, the band, of course, hired the studio, hire you, you do the work, and they stay 5 days. At the end of the week, they take all the tapes with them, not just stay in the studio, and then they can do whatever they want with the tape because they already pay for everything, and the tapes belong to them, right? So
Yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah.
they
Oh
take
yeah, the
everything.
tapes belong to everybody. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Today it's a little different because it's digital, where they
right,
have the main files and they give me the files, and then
right,
I have my mix files, and they usually don't get those because my session will never. They don't have all the gear that I have, so it will never be the same. As long as they
right.
have their main files, they can do whatever they want. I mean, so they just want the main mix, alternate mix or something.
Right. Now, the beauty of working from home, if let's say I were to be a musician, I hire you to mix my thing or master, I will send you all the file via the internet. We transfer, you
Yeah,
do you do your magic, and then at the end you say, okay, I can create a CD for you. Final, I work with a particular factory, how many you need, or I can send you all the
I
file
once
back, and then you can do
that's
whatever you.
usually up to them.
Got it, got it, got it.
Once I give them the mix and stuff, I'm sort of done with it. They order, they upload, they connect to the streaming. That's a whole business for somebody to do, by the way. You know what I mean? Just
Sure.
to take the next step, the in between step. Because a lot of people don't want to deal with it. And if someone could do it reasonably, they would get a lot of people to do it because a lot of bands are learning to do this stuff because they have to. It's do-it-yourself records, and a lot of times with the codes, ISRC codes, I install those on the mastering. That's one of the other mastering things, embedding the codes. So
Yeah.
it's the digital waterprint for the code, so for the song, so they get paid, and it's the way to get paid.
Mm, got it.
Yeah, an important part. The labels used to do that before. I mean, a lot of these streaming companies, they all do it because you need it. Otherwise, there's no you'll make some money and if you stay at it. You know what I mean? And can keep producing stuff, and you all of a sudden you get something that goes. And next thing you know, you get 30,000 hits watching, and then that can go to 40, and it can go to you got to service fans and stuff. That's a whole art. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely. How we doing? How are you doing on time? Are you okay? You need water or?
I'm good. I'm good. You have a couple more questions?
Yeah, you do. Lindsey Buckingham. It's another great guy, a great musician. Of course, I'm biased. I like Fleetwood Mac, so but I like so many bands. So
Who's that now?
Lindsey Buckingham.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that was a great time. Um, we're doing some tracking and part of the Stevie Nicks thing.
Yeah.
And I remember tracking um, Mick Fleetwood on a couple of those songs at this great other studio. It's no longer there, but it was a nice big room, brick room. Again, another band that needs a big room. The truck is coming in with the drum sets. The drum set was huge. It was beautiful. Mick had these gold hardware on his drums. They were big. I mean, it was a big sound. It was like you really just had to put the mics up there and maybe push a preamp up a little bit, push it. But his drum sounded good. And Lindsey Buckingham was just, the guitar never left his hands. If he was sitting on the couch and he was with the guitar, if he was
Wow.
eating, the guitar would be on his lap. I mean, it was one of those things where
Yeah.
didn't stop touching it. But he was terrific, really sweet guy, and he has that nice sounding voice, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
people, they're when they're hearing what they want, it's good. You got to work to make sure that you're hearing. You try what it's ever in the studio. You bring in the control room. That's what you are. You're a translator. Try and translate that sound through those speakers. So that's where it's good to have a collection of microphones based on what's coming out of the amp. You know.
I got you. What are you working nowadays? If you can tell, if you cannot tell, don't tell me.
Yeah, well, I'm mixing in a young band called the Dyes right now,
Yeah.
Dyes. They're from
Anyway, yeah.
California here in Los Angeles, so I'm mixing that record. And I work with Jessie Money. She has some songs coming out, and there's a bunch of other things I just mixed the live concert. But yeah, I've been, you got to stay at it and keep you're doing a good job so you get referrals,
Referral, right? Yeah.
and you got to put in a little extra time because it's your painting. You know what I mean? It's the money is irrelevant. You got to work on the art. You want them to love it, then there'll be less changes. But once it's your picture, it will be more complete. It's
So
like this is the record. You know what I mean? As opposed to like guessing what the outcome is. If you make it the outcome, put the extra time in, then it's your painting.
got you. Mark, thank you very much, man. It was great talking to you, man.
Hey,
And
thanks for
quite sure
thinking of
we'll
me.
do.
I mean,
Huh?
it's fun just to chat about it, and
Sure,
it's been
sure,
a
sure.
fun journey. And I'm calling this like my second win, trying to rock and roll more.
That's right. Yeah, well, I'm quite sure we'll do a part two, and then if eventually you end up writing a book, you can take all these interviews and glue it into a PDF book or
Okay,
something. Yeah.
sounds good. Well,
It was very
edit
nice
it
talking
up,
to you,
and
Mark.
I'll
Have a
check
great
it
afternoon
later.
down there, man.
Okay,
Take it
you
easy.
take care. Thank you again.
You too. Thanks again, man.
Bye.